All right, kicking off another episode of Zen and Callsigns, and I have a special guest, Blake Bolden. Welcome to the show.
No, I'm just kidding.
We share the same name, which is unique
Yeah.
and special, and I think we could probably even touch on that a little bit of where you got that because we chatted about that a little while ago. But thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a start.
Ooh, loaded question. Thanks for having me, Blakey. I call you Blakey to
That's all
your
right.
wifey. Um, that's my hockey nickname, and I think it's awesome. Yeah, I'm a 33-year-old hustler. I would call myself a
Nice.
hustler. I love and am in love and obsessed with the game of ice hockey. I've played it since I was 6 years old. And that's my career. I have a beautiful family, a husband that I absolutely adore, lovely parents that have supported me in my dream. And I'm just this woman in a man's world, as we kind of discussed
Yeah.
prior to this recording. And it's been quite the journey. And I think I'm also an ambassador. I'm an ambassador for the game as the first woman of color to play professional women's ice hockey, the first woman of color to be a scout in the NHL. And now I'm into broadcasting with ESPN, Bally Sports West, and now Amazon as an analyst and
Cool.
a reporter. And so it just keeps going on and on. I don't want to wrap my accomplishments into my identity, but it's been a fun journey and it's all
Yeah.
started at a young age in my love for the game of ice hockey.
So Boston College. So where are you from originally? And 6 years old. So start us there for
Yeah.
hockey. How did that work out?
6 years old, ice hockey was the game. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I was with a single mother who had three different jobs. One of them was a paper bagger or a newspaper deliverer, and she was also a nanny. She was also working in the hospital. She had me when she was 21, so she had to do all these things to support me and her. And one of those early mornings when you bag papers, you get up to go to the depot at like 2 o'clock in the morning. You go to the depot, you bag the papers, you do your route. And one of those mornings, a amazing, and I would call him my future dad, police officer came over and introduced himself to us while we were on the side of the road bagging papers. And he found, excuse me, he found himself crushing on my mother. They started a relationship. And then I discovered that his favorite sport was ice hockey. And because my mom was such a hard worker and was supporting us, we didn't have the opportunity to go to games and basketball games, baseball games, whatever you call it. When he told me his favorite sport was ice hockey, he brought me to a game and I fell in love with it right then and there. His brother actually billeted some of the players of the pro team in Cleveland that I was watching. They're called the Cleveland Lumberjacks back in the day. And so I would be able to go into the locker room. I'd be like this cute little kid running around the rink, eating popcorn in the suites, had the mascot come to my 10th birthday. And one day I was just like, I want to play this game. And his name is Leslie Dean. And he was just like, absolutely. Didn't ask my mom if we could play hockey or if I could play hockey. We just went straight to Play It Again Sports, got all the secondhand gear. And 2 days later, I was on the ice. And I have never looked back. So 6 years old now to 33. I have Leslie Dean, my pseudo stepfather, but real father in my eyes, father figure, introduced me to the game. And I'm so grateful for him and sharing his passion with me.
Incredible. So from 6 years old, so high school, is there, because again, I'm from Florida, and so we don't have
Yeah,
ice
you are.
hockey, and that's just not, and even hardly in my paradigm. But
Mhm.
so are there junior leagues? Is there everything kind of starting young to keep kind of funnel you into, college and professional type stuff?
Yeah, I mean, playing hockey in Cleveland, Ohio, it's not like football is a Cleveland sport, basketball is a Cleveland
Yeah.
sport, or, you know what I mean? So I was playing on boys' teams, getting my butt kicked. People were trying
Oh
to
yeah.
take me out when they'd see a little ponytail or braids coming out of my helmet.
Yeah.
So I had to play boys hockey. That was challenging,
Okay.
playing on like the
Yeah.
highest level. And I had to eventually play girls and women's hockey. So I went up to a boarding school in Lake Placid, New York. And if you don't know about Lake Placid, it's the 1980 historical Olympics where the U.S. beat USSR, and that's where I went to high school. Like that was my home rink. I was the only kid of
Cool.
color in that private
Wow.
school for 4 years. And I was just in this like freezing cold, -20-degree place in the winter that just focused on skiing and ice hockey. Famous people like Martin Brodeur went to that school, and there's this like wall of fame with all these incredible NHLers. And now I'm on that wall of fame, but I wasn't
Nice.
when I went there.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Was that an aspiration, like something like that? Because obviously, tangent is that Kelly, not exactly a professional athlete, but more like she has like some really gifted ability to like make like baskets, cornhole, make
Oh,
shots of stuff.
she crushes in cornhole.
It's I think we beat you guys at one point. But
Yeah,
even I
she
mean,
did.
and I think she coined the term, so it wasn't me. It was called a hole witch, where she just has the ability to get whatever type of object into a hole and win. Because we've like lost friends over it. Just luckily we didn't lose you guys. But so my point is circling back is you had ability and skill
Yeah,
and you had some things, and so you got some. So people were like, so did that at that younger age is like, so did that even the playing field for you, or like basically you had to like prove yourself? I imagine certainly being a female, certainly being something different and
yeah.
black, and so each time, and it was just like, did you relish in that, or how did you approach that?
Yeah, yeah, I relished in it. I'm really grateful that my mom was such a strong personality, because it would just be her and I walking into these arenas just solo dolo,
Yeah,
and I would look up to her and she would look down at me and she'd be like, "You ready, kid?" And all
yeah,
eyes were on us when we'd walk into
yeah,
the arena. And that was just something that I got used to my entire life playing
yeah.
in this sport. But then on the ice, it was a bit different. Like I said, people were charging at me. People were trying to take me out from behind on the boards. I think I got like severely concussed, but it wasn't diagnosed one time. I just saw all
Sure.
white. I was just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Sometimes parents in the stands, the things that my mom and my dad Leslie would hear. So did I relish in it? Yeah, I
I
think
see.
so. I think
Well, I
it
think you
fueled me.
just, yeah, I was like, you had to either, well, you kept showing up. It's
Yeah,
like, what do you do? Kind of like if
absolutely.
that's a beautiful thing. I love that, where you see that vitriol, and like you'll feel kind of sad for them because they're upset about something, but
Yeah.
then you're a contender, like you're out there, you're
Oh
playing,
yeah.
and so it does all of that other stuff kind of washes away, except for somebody nailing you in the back of the head. That's a little different. That means it's like fights on for, like,
Listen,
I feel like,
like Kelly, if you get the hole in the cornhole bat, like in the hole, like you're a winner. Like no one can tell
yeah,
you anything. If you win the
yeah,
game, if you're a better player, if you're a better skater, if you have more points than everybody at the end of the season, it's like,
yeah,
what are you gonna say? I'm better than
right,
you.
yeah,
so,
yes,
so that's kind of
that,
how I viewed it.
yeah, exactly. I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, I love that. All right, so obviously crushing it, high school hockey, and so is this
Yeah.
when the seasons work? Do they just like season on, season off? Did you do anything off season wise, or
Yeah, this school particularly had you do a fall sport and a spring sport, and hockey is usually September through, in the NHL, June if you're in the playoffs, but for youth, probably April. And so I rowed. I had the opportunity to be on the crew team, which is like the
okay,
craziest thing ever. And my mom actually forced me
incredible?
to do it because she was
Yeah,
like, this will get you really set endurance wise for ice hockey. We'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, we'd run, we'd get in a
wow,
boat, we'd be rowing like 2,000, 3,000 meters, and it was awful. But it taught me
yeah,
some really good lessons, got me prepared for the season, and I
yeah,
was probably one of the most intense, successful players to come out of that high school for a female
yeah.
hockey player.
Well, I feel like rowing sets your like legs up for hockey to be super stable,
I had tree
something like that.
trunks, man. They were
Yeah,
just like ready to go.
yeah.
But
Wow.
it was
Okay.
fun. It was fun. I would have never been in a boat in Cleveland, Ohio, to be able to do that on Mirror Lake. I don't know if you've ever been to Lake Placid, but it's such a
No, I
magical
haven't.
place. It's so
Cool.
gorgeous. It's this tiny little village with a strip of Main Street, and the lake is
Hmm.
actually a mirror. It's gorgeous with all the Adirondack Mountains behind. And it was just such
Wow.
a scenic place to kind of grow up as a teenager and decide the kind of person, the athlete the details that I wanted to have moving in forward to college and professionally after.
Yeah. So when you're walking into those arenas like that, I love that depiction because in some ways done that, experienced that myself of sports and different things, and that role model of your mom. Like I think kids are in a lot of ways reflections of their parents, and so I feel like she put on the right. She's probably as scared or feeling what you're feeling as much or more,
Yeah.
and she's putting on like that shield for you, and then you're just like, all right, mom's got it, so I
Yep.
got it. Is that kind of
Yep.
how you felt and kind of what it was like?
Yeah, she was, I mean, she is still one of the strongest people I know. She's been through so much. And the craziest thing to me is that her daughter, who I'm her only child, said, "Hey, I want to play this sport." She knew nothing about. She put me through prep school, which is not cheap. She busted her behind. She made my dreams come true. But the deal was with her and I that if I'm going to put you in this very expensive sport, you're going to have good grades and you're going to have to work hard. If I see you on the ice slacking off, then it's done. And
Yeah.
that was just what we had. So I just saw the strength and resiliency in her. And yeah, her just demeanor with different types of parents and people. And like you said, the mask that she put on, and maybe it wasn't a mask. I'm not really sure. That's a good question. I should probably ask her how she
Well, I think
felt.
it was. I think everybody has this persona that I can imagine. I can only try to imagine where
Yeah.
everybody's looking at you like, why are you, I got it.
Yeah.
It's all of those things or whatever's happening, the energy, right? You're feeling it
Yes.
rather than like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm sure, I don't know if everybody's just high
Welcome.
fiving and saying, or maybe they were.
No,
Okay. They weren't. So
okay.
yeah, interesting. I think that's, like, I think that's what a way to see your mother, like, and a woman in her power. And I think
Yeah.
that, I love
But
that.
she was like that. She was with everything. Like, if you talk to her a certain type of way and you were a stranger, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I like that about her.
Well, and I think that that's yeah. Kelly says that to me sometimes, where I'm just like, I don't can I I operate with radical transparency and truthfulness, and why do I need to have a filter if it's in that realm, if it's wrong or something like that? We're just gonna have a conversation. And I
Yeah.
like that to the surface. I'm sure I'd like your mom if we had a
Yeah.
chance to chat.
Yeah. I
Um,
hope you guys can meet. Well, you did meet at our wedding briefly.
we met briefly,
Yeah.
yes, but not a long time to chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so high school, crushing it, high school, and then you want to go to college. What
Mhm.
was that like? Do you want to go to Boston College for hockey, or is that
Yeah.
what did that look like?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to go to Boston College when I was 14.
Oh, okay, okay,
I
all
picked
right,
the school. I saw them in Lake Placid play in the Frozen Four, which is just the Final Four in
hmm,
collegiate
cool.
ice hockey. And I saw them play, and they went to triple overtime with this school called Minnesota Duluth, and they lost in this triple overtime. But there was something in me that snapped, and I had all of these college like letters that would come to you, like, "Hey, we're interested. We see you. Whatever. You're a prospect." But there was something about Boston College. They had two coaches that were Olympians. I knew I wanted to be Olympian. They had just the city of Boston. I'm sure you have been definitely is just an air of like blue collar hustle, work your tail off. And I wanted to go
Yeah,
somewhere that could change the trajectory of that school as far as ice hockey for women. I didn't want to be just a big fish in a big pond. I wanted to be a big fish in a smaller pond. So I chose Boston College. And when I went to that school, I was freshman, all rookie, blah, 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 defensive, high scoring, all American, those sorts of things, captain my senior year. And we changed that school's program, the
hmm.
program school, and we went three times Frozen Four, Hockey East champions, never been before, bean pot tournaments, and now they're one of the top 10 schools in the nation.
And so kind of going ahead a little bit. So female ice hockey. So again, same things like how many schools do they compete? Canadian? Like what is that
Yeah.
league like? How does that work?
Yeah, so NCA probably has like 30-ish schools that compete in
Okay,
Division 1
cool.
athletics for women's ice hockey, and those are only in the United States. There are Canadian schools, but they're in a whole different region. There's Division 2 and Division 3, and I guess the best schools are Division 1, and usually those schools are Minnesota because that's a hotbed.
Yep.
Ohio State, for whatever reason, is really great right now. And there's a lot of great schools in Boston, just in the New England region, in the Hockey East region that we were in. So yeah, I mean, it's spread out. There's no schools in Florida, there's no schools in California or
Yeah.
Arizona or anywhere like that. It's kind of like Midwest and New England are the
Gotcha.
most of the
Yeah.
schools. Yeah.
So in college, so I think you're a psychology major, correct?
Yeah.
Love it. Hey, I was going to be a psychology major, it just,
Really?
but yeah, same. It was psychology, but then they're like, hey, why would you do that? You have to be a master's to make any money. And I'm like, but I
For
like
sure.
it. So, but then
Yeah.
I became a history major. So it didn't, and then I was a pilot. So it doesn't matter apparently.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. And now I'm in broadcasting, and psychology for me is just, I guess, understanding people, and that's just energy
Well,
exchange, right?
I think maybe for you, it's like once you psychology and that those types of fields is like could give you tools to describe what you're already feeling and kind of doing.
For sure.
Like it's already kind of I'm already kind of doing these things, and now I can like put a name to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in college, a lot of success there, and then what was the kind of aspirations for after college? I mean, were you still thinking hockey in some capacity?
Well, when I was in high school, I got a taste of being a world champion for the U18 team. And so I won two gold medals with Team USA in when I was a junior and a senior of college. So I was kind of in this USA hockey pool, and my goal was to be an Olympian. And that's something that I kind of had set my mind towards when I was 12 years old, when I saw this Olympic team play in Cleveland and I got all
Yeah.
the girls' autographs and, role models, and you're just starstruck, like, oh, I want to do that. And so I was a two-time world champion in high school. I went to BC. I had a great year. And after school, I was just like, oh, yeah, it's Sochi Olympics in 2014, and I graduate in 2013. They're going to centralize between those two, between that year. And that's it. I'm just going to be an Olympian. And so when I graduated, I tried out for the Olympic team. And in the 4 years of going to BC, I was going in and out of these national team programs and trying out for the senior women's team. And I was always getting cut for some reason. And I was like, how the heck am I getting cut when I am like top defensive scoring in the entire country? And I'm an All American and I'm doing all these great things. And I just couldn't figure it out. Come to find out later, the coach just really didn't like me. She was the coach of Harvard. And
No.
I don't think she was very happy that I didn't commit to Harvard when I decided I wanted to go to BC. There was this weird rivalry that we had. And then one of the meetings that take place when they're deciding the team, someone had eventually told me that the coach said I was uncoachable. And that was just like a serious stain to my reputation as an athlete who wants to
Yeah.
pursue her dream to becoming an Olympian. And that broke me for a very long time. And so she would bring me to these camps. I would be like the last, like seventh defenseman, and then I'd get cut. And I'm just like, oh, like
Hmm.
it really got under my skin. And so the last year I got cut and I didn't go to Sochi. I went home, I graduated, I cried my eyes out. I decided I'm not going to play hockey anymore. Like I'm done. I disappointed myself, I disappointed my family. I didn't make my dream come true. I told my mom I was going to do all this stuff. And then probably 4 months into my post-graduation sulking, I got a call from a professional coach of the Canadian Women's Hockey League. And this was like a league that was happening and I didn't know too much about it. I just knew I wanted to be Olympian. I didn't really care about playing pro. And the Canadian Women's Hockey League had 5 teams in it at the time. And they weren't necessarily paid, but it was a place that you could play post college. And I got drafted. She was like, Blake, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm at
Hmm.
home. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life. And she goes, well, I'm going to draft you first round, first overall for the Boston Blaze. Stop crying, pack your bags, get back to Boston, and find a place to live because the season starts in September. And I was like, oh, shit, okay.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I did. And I played in the CWHL for 2 years, and then another league happened. And that's kind of where my professional hockey career took off.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
going back a little bit. So objectively, from your mind and everybody else could see like you were certainly one of the best players and that, and then you shouldn't be cut from like, I'm sure you're just like looking at the data and you're like,
I'm
how's
like,
this does
analytics doesn't make sense.
right. So yeah, I feel like was that the first time that your performance and how good you were had nothing to do with it? Was that like kind of a
Yeah.
shocker for you? Where it's
Oh
like
yeah, it gutted me. I couldn't figure it out. And
yeah,
as maybe listeners are like, oh, well, she was good at everything. Like there's going to be an obstacle and adversity going to hit
well,
you in the
yeah,
face and
you can
punch you in the
never
mouth.
anticipate all
Right.
that.
And
Yeah,
so it hit me and I was like, oh my gosh, I have poured every ounce of all that I had
yeah,
into this game and my dream is just yay big and I wanted to be, I didn't see anyone on the Olympic team of color. So I was like, I'm going to be the first Black woman on this US
yeah,
Olympic team and it's going to be great. And I'm going to make my family proud. And it didn't happen. And I was just like, I was like, what is going on? like,
yeah,
it was devastating. I think I spiraled into a depression probably for a couple of years
hmm,
after, where I was just trying to find myself, find my purpose, and my reason
yeah.
for why I was playing the game anymore.
So a question I was going to ask you, and you kind of maybe this is the one of like, was that what failure do you have in your life, or if you have another good one, to just kind of demonstrate of like in life is full of failures and successes. Would you say
Yeah.
that's a one, or do you have something else that how would you describe it?
Well, no, that's definitely the biggest one that kind of just turned me upside down. And then just the journey of playing what some would call professional hockey, but not really,
Yeah,
and just trying to survive and play the game that you love, and you're figuring out why the heck you're doing something anyway, and you just have no idea what direction your life is going in.
hmm.
And so
Yeah,
now I think of myself 10 years ago when this situation probably was happening around that time, a little bit longer than 10 years ago. But now to me being like top 3 NHL most influential women in sports and a broadcaster and all these great things that are coming, there's like a 10-year period where I was just like in the mud, figuring it out and not knowing who I was and just trying to follow breadcrumbs in
hmm.
hoping that everything was going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, well said. I think that everybody needs to realize that, and to some degree, where like I still don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like I have no idea what I'm
Right.
doing. Like so I think that that's, and some people maybe have a little less, a little more, but I think that the goal. So okay, so so you're playing hockey,
Yeah.
semi-pro or pro in
Yeah.
Canada. You do that for
Yeah.
about 2 years,
Yeah.
and then so how old are you here? Let's say 2 years in. Like, and how long ago was that? Just to like for
So
perspective
I'm
here.
33 now, and this
Okay.
was, yeah, so about 10 years ago. Right. 10 years ago, I was 23, just graduated from college, 22, 23. I won a championship my second year in the CWHL. And
And so you're
then,
just looking back at that Harvard coach. It's like, dude, we could have won the Olympic gold. You stupid.
bruh,
But I feel like was that maybe I'm sure you had it before, but was that maybe the first time again, as we said, like the analytics didn't match you getting cut, where you're like, oh man, it has nothing. This level, it doesn't have anything to do with how good I am. These
oh my
people's
gosh.
egos are attached to their identities, and it's like kind of like going back through your psychology book, be like, oh,
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh shoot, what's going on? Oh my gosh, you have no idea how many times I've thought about it because there have been a few Olympic cycles that have gone down where they have not won. They were
yeah.
actually up 3-1 in an Olympic Games, and Canada came back and took it away from them. And I'm just like, oh, and then the people on the team were like half of the people on the team were from Harvard. I mean,
I see.
like, it's like,
Wow.
okay, well, all right.
Yep. Interesting. So 2 years into the professional, you're playing hockey, at least doing something you love.
Yes.
What happens next? How did you kind of what was the next kind of break or
The next break was in 2014, 2015, I should say. I had played 2 years in that CWHL, and then the CWHL kind of went away because it was in a folding, not really sure logistically how to be a full league, right? Because we were just flying everywhere in Canada. We were the only team in America that was going to all these Canadian teams, and it was just a lot. And I also had a full-time 9 to 5 job. And so there
Okay.
was this new league called the National Women's Hockey League in 2015 that were actually paying players salaries to play the game of ice hockey. So this was just like a historical, National Women's Soccer League or WNBA type of deal. And all of us left from the CWHL and played in this league. So that was massive, big names like Sarah Nurse and Kendall Coyne Schofield and Hillary Knight, which maybe you do know or not know. We all did that. And so we won our first year. And that was the year that I became the first woman of color to play professional women's ice hockey, because professional means you get paid. And
Yeah.
that was kind of just like a boom where I was put out into the center. There was a young girl, actually, maybe even before that in the CWHL, that came to me, and she had this beautiful sign and it said Blake Bolden, all my number, glitters. And she was like, after the game, please sign this. You were the reason why I played hockey or started playing hockey. And for me, that was just like a mental switch, because I was playing the game solely for my accolades and solely for my dreams and being an Olympian and yada, yada, yada. And I didn't realize this sort of role model that I was becoming and stepping into at a young age. So my mindset switched from, oh, I don't need to have gold medals and silver medals and all this metal, literally metal, hidden in a sock drawer to become
Yeah.
great. I can
Yeah.
be a great person and a great athlete and a great mentor and role model for people that just need it or want it. Because when I was growing up playing the game, I didn't necessarily have a Blake Bolden that I could hang up on my poster and be like, that's who I want to be like. And so that's when my mindset
Yeah.
changed, and I kind of
Wow.
just took that and really held myself to that standard of the type of person and athlete and role model that I wanted to be for the younger generation.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was gonna kind of ask you, like, what that. I feel like you described what I was thinking of, how that flipped and changed. Where it's like, oh my god, like these people like me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. The purpose,
Yeah,
right? You want to find
exactly.
purpose. Psychologically, that's like what makes you happy in life, is having purpose. And I didn't know my purpose. And then I found it, and then I could kind of settle into who and how I wanted to grow as a woman.
Yeah. All right. So found some purpose. When did the opportunities come along in the sense of transitioning out of playing to commentating, recruiting, and then because again, there's it's like I know really athletic people that are just incredibly gifted. However, to have kind of like the like actors was like, oh, it's a triple threat. It's like right where you can like, hey, you can play, be good at sports, but can
Yeah.
you talk? Can you talk to people?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that transition? Did that start the transition or what? Tell me, fill in the gaps there.
Fill in the gaps. Okay, so CWHL, NWHL, I played a little bit overseas in Switzerland, and I was
Oh,
kind of
cool.
just getting sick of the grind of like working full time and then going off and playing and driving in 10-hour buses and just this tug and pull. And people are
Yeah.
always like, for the love of the game. And I'm like, well, I'm a real person and my body hurts and I got to sleep and I got to work. I'm like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my career.
Well, so what were you doing for work? Since it seemed like you had to supplement to some degree for work at the time. So
I
what were
had
you
to
doing?
supplement like 90%. Yeah. And living in
Okay.
Boston, that was not cheap. So I was a student services manager for a
Okay.
nonprofit at an organization called Inner City Weightlifting. And I was kind of it was a perfect fit for me because it was a gym actually, and we were trying to support the gang related youth and the kids that were going in and out of prison for selling drugs and gun violence. And I was there to kind of provide opportunity, housing opportunity, educational opportunity. I was kind of like a social worker, if you will, and
Yeah.
using kind of like my psychology-esque degree. And that's where I actually met Miles, my husband now, because he was volunteering there. And as Miles and I cultivated our relationship, he was like, I'm moving to California. I've always wanted to live there. And I was like, dude, I'm still playing professional hockey. Like, I don't know what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And so I just kind of took a leap when he really was going to California. I was like, dang, I'm really going to miss him. And I was like, I should just like see what happens. I've been in Boston now for 8 years, 4 in college, 4 post,
Yep.
and I have this game, but there's got to be more to life than this work hockey balance where I'm kind of just pulling and tugging and all of that. And so I went to California and I went to the closest hockey rink to me in Cali, which was the Staples Center at the time in LA. And I was a part of this group called Black Girl Hockey Club that was just trying to diversify the game and getting more diverse fans
Yeah.
introduced to the game of hockey. And I went with them and I met the president of the Los Angeles Kings, which is the NHL club for LA. And his name is Luc Robitaille. And he is, if you Google him, probably one of the most legendary players of all time in the NHL, played with Wayne Gretzky and drafted in a 9th round and just completely was a dark horse and
Yeah.
all-time leading scorer, this and that. And so I met him and I was like, just shell shocked. I was like, holy shit, this is Luc Robitaille. And I go up and I say hello. And he knew who I was. And he knew about me. He knew about, the struggle that it is to be a professional women's ice hockey player and kind of balancing work and figuring out life. And
And
he
then
was
you
like,
knew how to like talk well. I could talk good too,
yeah, I was like, I'm gonna do, give me a job. No, I didn't say any of that, but he was just like, he was like, have you ever thought about being a pro scout? And I was like, no, dude, I don't even know what you're talking about, but like,
Yeah.
let's exchange emails. And I went up for an interview, talked good in the
Yeah.
interview, got the job, and then come to find out I'm the
Yeah.
second
Yeah.
woman to ever pro scout in the NHL. And that's really when the ball started getting crazy.
Yeah. Interesting. So kind of going back to, that side gig you had, well, maybe more of like a full-time role of
Yeah.
helping whatever that was, inner city kids,
Yeah.
women of
Yeah.
color, of giving back. And so that is something that's really like important to me, and even this podcast and almost everything I do, of like giving back in some capacity. And so how have you thought about that? Seems like you have thought about it for a while. So what's your take on that?
Giving back in general,
Yeah.
I think that giving back, when you give back, you only receive in tenfold.
Yeah.
I think Miles will say when I volunteered at Any City Weightlifting, I got my family. He got the girl, he got his wife, and we
Yeah.
have been pretty happy in his volunteering there. And then just for me, giving back to young kids that want to learn how to play the game and having mentorships for young girls from 13 years old to 16 years old and my Embolden Her mentorship program, or creating programs with the LA Kings in our community relations department just to give back to the game, because I fell into the game literally by luck and my life was completely changed. And the feeling I got when I was 6 years old, walking into the Gund Arena in that Cleveland rink, watching that pro team, the smell of the ice, the sound that it makes, the body checking, the fights, the crowd. And then when I got to feel free on the ice to
Yeah.
showcase my skills and getting the empowerment and the strength as a shy only child and a kid of color, just kind of trailblazing and not even realizing it, I was like, you got to make way for other kids to be able to dream too, and supporting them in their mental health
Yeah.
journeys and their athletic journeys. That's probably one thing that I love doing the most, is calling kids and providing opportunity and opening doors, because all these doors that I'm opening, like just by happenstance in meeting people and making good network and having a good network of friends and colleagues, is I just want to blast all the doors open for other people. So it's not just a stuffy white
Yeah.
person sport that, isn't as welcoming when I was getting punched in the face for having braids or being a girl. It's like, I want to
Well,
change that.
well, I think it's so interesting because it is this juxtaposition of one side, you had that adversity, and that's what makes like a champion. And then the
Right.
other side, it's like, if you make it too easy, then it's like, I don't know, this interesting balance of like, but even
Yeah.
just like, hey, like let's have it a little bit open, like
Yeah.
so provide some opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think so. The subject I'd like to chat about in that is, powerful women, and I don't mind powerful women at all. And I
No, you
think that our
don't.
society, I think that our society, and for a long time, probably almost all of recorded history, has had issue with powerful women. Certainly, so women in general, period. And then certainly when you get into women of color, of any other ethnicity, and you look through just the world and all the history, and there seems to be a problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, not to get into that too much, but I think I don't even know exactly where I'm going with that. But what's your take on maybe not just women of color, but like women in the US today? I feel that it's still like the divide. I don't want to get into anything too odd, but it just feels like the empowerment of women is always gets kind of hijacked. And I want a woman be a woman, and I want that. So what's your take on powerful women, and how have you managed yourself? Because you know who you are, and I think that's important, because like you're a powerful woman because you're
Yeah.
smart,
Yeah.
intelligence, you could fight, you kind of have all of these attributes. And so how would you say to maybe other younger women of like, hey, how did you do it? How did you think about things of like being powerful in who you are?
Yeah, that's a really big question. And I think
Yeah,
I've been I think I've been realizing that I'm a powerful woman. And one thing I definitely have realized that powerful men aren't afraid of powerful women. Like my husband, you and your amazing wife, Kelly, like Kelly is a powerful woman and you are not scared. You're like, bring it on, right? And I
yeah,
think that's what our society needs. It's just a beautiful balance of powerful men accepting and wanting powerful women and living and working in cohesion. Luke Robitaille, as I said, one of the greatest hockey players of all time, he saw who I was and he went for it and he accepted me and brought me into that room. I would not be in that room if it weren't for him. And that is just what we need. If you, my name is Blake Bolden, and a part of that is being bold. And that is something that I've tried to kind of use as a brand marker.
yeah,
And in my mentorship, in telling people to be true, be you, and be bold. And a part of that mantra is telling myself that. That is
sure,
that is something that I have to tell myself every time I walk into a space where I'm being looked at based off of my gender or my race, or when I was a pro scout for 4 seasons with the LA Kings, one of the youngest people in the room talking about, the players that I was seeing and thinking that our team should acquire or trade for or whatnot. That was something that was really challenging for a 30, 29-year-old woman in a space with 40, 50, 60-year-old men, white
yeah.
men. And some of them were extraordinary. Some of them didn't want to sniff it out. Some of them were like, I'll see you over there. And
Yeah,
that's okay. I had to build my muscle, and I think I built my
yeah.
muscle since I was 6 years old. And
Well, no,
that's
I
just
yeah,
part of it.
um, we're so again, how I this is me. So I go along and I'm not exactly, I'm like just in the moment, and I think
Yeah,
that's a good way to live. It's like I'm just like going along, do 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 do.
yeah,
That
you
is
are.
how I
Thank you.
am most of the time. And and so do you do that? And then my next question is of like, right, present, that's the best way to be. Most
Yeah,
psychologies, how you operate, that operating system. And how often are you caught off guard by people's misogyny or prejudice, or like, is that, does, I mean, maybe not as much now, but I feel
yeah.
like maybe more when you're younger. So can you describe that to me?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I was younger, when I was playing pro, and not even just misogyny, just being a person of color playing hockey, it could be from women too, just
That's
ignorance sometimes.
yeah,
Um, Now that I probably for the last 5 years have been handling my business, I'll say very, very politely. I don't think people want to rock that boat because of the strength that I have when I enter
Yeah.
into a room, the poise and just the, I don't want to say power because
No,
it's,
I know. I think it's the aura, the power. It's like how you carry yourself. It's like
yeah,
there's a Jocko Willing talks about how when, people that are criminals, they look at somebody, they talk about like it's collective quality where they're
yeah,
like, oh, I'm not going to rob that guy
I'm not
because
going to
he
mess with that
definitely,
person.
or it's similar muscle you had to work. Do you
It's
think it's
the
unfair?
muscle that I had to work, and it's the vision or me watching my mother work through it too.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of both. It's me seeing how my mom dealt with it at a completely different time and
Mm,
generation, and then seeing even just the small privilege that I've been gifted and still with the struggle that I have to deal with, but it's better than what my mom was dealt with. And just being able to navigate and being
yeah.
intelligent, but also having to have the social, psychological awareness of, girl, you're the only Black person in this meeting right now. So you might not want to be all crazy or loud, or you might have to just be like black cat energy, right? Like you might just have to
Mhm.
be direct, and there's just a learning curve. Like, because now even just being a Black women are always like, angry Black women, coin.
Yeah.
And there's just a level of walking on this fine line that you have to learn how to do. Just being
Yeah.
a woman in general. It doesn't matter what color you are. It's just you
Yeah.
are physically not as strong as men, but you are intelligent and have a
Mhm.
different way of communicating. And that can be beneficial in
Yeah.
having diversity of thought and just collaborating together with a strong man that can handle that.
Right. I always thought this, and we may even cut this out, but when Kelly and I chat and talk about, whatever it is that we talk about, I'm like, I don't understand why men, who are physically stronger than a woman, they want to take advantage of that because I'm like, a knife to the, you're dead. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what am I missing something here? It's like and again, that goes to the thing of like, if women want to be powerful, it's like, it's there. And I don't know if our society doesn't want to tell them that they have this, take it, go get it. Or maybe
Mhm.
it's more men and women saying that to say that like you are powerful. And I think that you're in a way doing that, demonstrating it and giving back to show like, this is attainable, but through hard work, adversity, and some challenges,
Yeah.
failures.
Yeah.
So some things like that.
Yeah, it's an art. It's a beautiful art and a dance to being a woman. And I take so much pride in all of my experiences, whether they be challenging or just amazing. It's like I'm realizing that power as we discussed, and also I can bring life into this world too. Like I am a magical being. So if there's a
Exactly.
woman that doesn't feel powerful, if she doesn't feel an ounce of power, it's like, no, you are magic. You are literally
Exactly.
magic.
Right. Agreed. On that note, so what is your philosophical operating system?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like for me, if it scares me a little bit, I'm down.
There you go. That's what I'm talking. That's See, I feel like that's so. I ask this question a lot to guests that come on, and because I think it's interesting because I've kind of developed this for myself, and like, right, but the first part is like, I don't know, because right, and then the next part is, I think that. So I don't know if could you elaborate on any of that for us of like, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I had to think about that. I was like, what really drives me? Because right now in this life that I'm living in the past 5, 6 years, every professional choice that I've made on the little chessboard has been very freaking frightening. But with the frightening fear or the doubt or whatever that is that creeps into your mind, when you step into it, there's so much more on the other side of that. Like being a first, okay, check, done that. Being a person of color, okay, check, done that. Being in this room where there's like all these men and you're in a war room and you're discussing players and it's draft time and you're like, this is who I think we should get. Check, okay. being in front of live television when
Oh
you're
yeah. I feel
literally,
like that's the biggest thing because I feel like, listen, also, if whoever's listening to this that has no idea about hockey or anything, that is to me of like on your toes, talking about things and not being
oh,
like probably how many times I've said in just this conversation, like Blake, you have no chance, right? You know, but be on your toes. I think that's to me is the most
crazy.
like stress and like geez.
Oh
So
my
that's so
goodness.
intense, and but
Like,
also I love it though. Like also, it's like I only want to do that because it's kind of scary, wild, kind of fun.
it's like jumping out of a plane or probably flying a plane. You're just like, holy
Yeah.
crap, the red light's going on and you're hearing the theme song and you got people talking in your ear. You're like, oh, on camera in 30 seconds and 10 and 1 and go. And you're like,
Yeah.
ah. So it's been so fun. But honestly, for me, it's the closest feeling that I get to playing the game. Because when
Yeah.
you're in a championship game and it's game 7 and you're in the starting lineup and you're like the top D and you're on the power play 1 or whatever that is, like you got to show up. And
Yep.
that's the type of athletic drive that I have that hopefully is going to make me into a long-term broadcaster in the future. But it's scary to be on live
Oh, well,
television.
and also I've seen you and it's exceptional. Like
Thanks.
just all of the so again, looking at things of how I think about things is, is a person good? Are like it's just simple evaluation of merit, character and things like that. And then you again, like we said before, you talk good. And so
Talk
and it's
good.
just like it's entertaining, it's like unique, and again then I how I think then it's like, oh, she's beautiful, she's like very unique and
Yeah.
has all these abilities, and I think that you're probably I would imagine you're just going to be doing this for a long time. I hope for you.
I hope so. That's the goal. That's the goal. And honestly, I'm not going to lie, television money is lucrative. So if I could be into it for a long time, that would be really good for me from someone who just didn't know where I was going to go, didn't know where I
Yeah.
was going to play, didn't achieve the goals that I wanted to professionally as a hockey player, but I'm achieving all of that and then some in this time of my life, and I think it's only going to improve from here.
Cool. Where was I gonna? There's another question I wanted to ask. Shoot. So I think the recapping on what you were just mentioning about fear, and so that there's lots of different books. The obstacle is the way, Ryan
Yeah.
Holiday, but then also again we have to always touch on as Dune, is because I compare my wife to a Benny Jesuit. From got to go watch the movie. And I know you guys have seen the movie,
Oh, absolutely.
and so it's just like that is there's that litany against fear, and it's the idea is like going into the fear because it's just an illusion, and then when you pass through it, it's like, oh, this is, and then whatever it is that's next is
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
And I'd say, like, what would you say about that of continually being kind of stepping into those like trepidatious situations, or where your gut is kind of butterflies? I don't know. How have you thought about that, and how would you describe how you do those things to somebody who would be listening or watching?
I lean into the fear because you have to. I feel like the more you try to avoid it or run away from it, the harder the journey is going to be, right? If you're choosing to if you're choosing to go the route or the path of the fear. So for me, when I'm feeling those butterflies and my gut's just doing 180s and it's just crazy, I'm like, all right, Blakey, like in my mind, I'm like, there are a couple options, right? You could pass out and just be like, oh, I can't do this, right? And do you want that? Absolutely not. Or you could show the bleep up, and I say like the F word because I'm like ready to go. It's like
Yeah.
you show up as a primitive person, right? You tap into those feelings, you tap into the emotions, and you use that energy. Now when I feel fear, I'm like, oh no, this is just excitement. This is just excitement for me to step into performance. And luckily, Miles is very deep into breath work. And so I use a lot of those tactics, all the fire breath, the box breathing. And I got the
Yeah.
microphone in my hand and I'm just like, breathe in 4. Okay, pause at the top, breathe out 4.
Yeah.
It's like you just kind of come up with your own system. But you would be disappointed in yourself, I think, if you didn't push through it or at
Well,
least
yeah,
try.
that's the regret. Oh yeah, that just leads to regret and
Yeah,
destruction. My
you don't want
feelings, like,
that.
and people don't know that. They think, oh, it's fear, so don't do that. It's like, no,
It's
man.
safe. No,
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Kind of touching on breath work. So I've had a few people on and chatted with, and myself do breath work. And I've had a buddy of mine. He's made the statement that breath work and understanding it, doing it properly, is more powerful than psychedelics or pharmaceuticals. How
Yeah.
would you, just as somebody listening to as well, how have you used that, and what's your thought on that?
I agree. I agree. If you've done breath work and you've actually experienced I almost think of it as like a cellular expansion where you do the breath work, you do the inhale and you hold at the top and you squeeze everything. Like there's so many different versions
Yeah.
of breath work and ways to do it. But if you find the way that works for you, I like to do like fire breathing, like right? Like I'm doing power poses in the green room by myself after hair and makeup. Like I'm getting myself ready. And,
Yeah, that mental preparation is almost as, yeah,
right.
that's huge.
The
Yeah.
mental preparation. And I think even as an athlete, being on the bench, right? Miles works with a lot of athletes, a lot of hockey players now, and being able to calm yourself down after a 45-second shift on the ice and then being able to be on the bench and you've got 30 seconds to calm yourself down, but then to kind of leave that other shift in the past and step into a new version or a new dimension of the game
Yep.
is very empowering. And then after the craziness of a game, for me, after being on air, puck drops at 7:30, it doesn't end until 10:30, 11 o'clock. You're not getting into bed until 12 o'clock in the morning. You're on an insane high.
Yeah.
Like the adrenaline is running. You can't go to sleep. So then you have to focus on practicing a way to come back down. So
Yeah.
slowing your breathing, making sure that you're turning all the craziness off and turning the computer off and wiring down. And so there's just so
Yes.
many techniques that popping in a sleeping pill at night, that's only going to hurt you later on, or popping in an Adderall or doing whatever to get you ready. Just try breathing. It's free.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
free.
Exactly. So do you have, sorry, I gotta put this, let me see if this will equalize out here.
It's dark. That Bali time.
I know. Well, there we go. All right. So that being said, and I know we're coming up on, do you have any atomic habits that you do kind of
Ooh,
from, workout, breath work, and different things that you could share that, you incorporate into your life? It could be eating, health. What are those, what are some of the things that you do to manage your mental health?
yeah. I think the technology is a really important thing to be able to be responsible about.
I hear you. That's like, you mean like cell phone,
Yeah.
tablet type stuff? Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I
I
think it's the
think,
most addictive thing in our
yeah.
lives right now.
Yeah, I don't check my social media after a game, Twitter or X or whatever. People would be like, "She's shit," or people would be like, "She's amazing," and you're just like, "Well, okay, well, I'm just not checking any of it
I
because
can't even. Oh
I
my
don't want to. I don't want to
jeez.
read that."
Yeah.
Or just anything like that. It's for me, especially first thing in the morning. I like to practice a little noble silence for probably an hour when I get up. And Miles kind of got me into doing that because he was doing it. And I was like, well, I don't have anyone to talk to. And so I'm like, okay, no phones and no talking unless I have a really early meeting.
Yep.
And that has been really nice to just slow my waking. I think the way you start your morning is very important to how the rest of your day is going to go. So if you're starting your morning and you're just like immediately picking up your phone and scrolling on Instagram or immediately responding to emails, that gets your cortisol levels going and you're already like getting ready to go and you're barely out of REM sleep, dude. Like what's going on? So I think for me, the technology responsibility and before bed as well, depending on the situation, like if it's a game and it's 10 o'clock at night, like I'll probably set an alarm to get ready for my flight the next day. But I try to just kind of have those practices before bed and when I wake up, meditation, working out has been really important to me. Definitely doesn't need to be like a full blown like powerlifting session, but if I could get like 15, 20 minutes, I carry bands with me when I travel because I don't know where I'm going to be. So maybe I can get like a 15-minute pump in the hotel room or whatever. So I think just being, I guess, cognizant of how your body responds to things and trying to not be so stimulated all the time because my job is so high stress that when I'm not doing it, I want to be as chill as possible.
Yeah. I think, and even with social media, is that if you don't have haters, you're not doing something right, on one side. Like you got to have one. Like
I
I
mean,
was, it's
whatever.
crazy. On X, I'll share this one because it's like, I thought it was so insane. On X, posting some of this stuff,
Mhm.
right? And somebody takes a screenshot of the headshot that's kind of on all my places, LinkedIn, whatever. Takes that screenshot, blows it up for the whole picture of like the whole image of the thumbnail, like the whole
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
and like reposts it. And then below that, he then posts a video of like something. I didn't even go there, but it was just like, it was so bizarre and kind of demented. You're like,
What's
oh,
wrong,
okay.
dude?
Well, so this is has nothing to do with me. This is all this sad man's or sad, But I think that's, and I've seen, your Twitter, and you have like thousands of people. And so I can't, and I don't know if you're on X as well, but I feel like Twitter or X is more crazy,
Oh,
especially now. It's
yeah.
just
Yeah.
very sad and maybe very dark. And so, and I
Yeah.
think if you are kind of like looking at that, then it could be like, I think even the strongest minds, like have most resilient minds, you could spiral with some of the things they will say. So
We're hardwired to like be in community and be well liked. And
yeah.
if someone's saying that you suck and you're trying so hard to not suck,
I know.
it might creep in a little bit.
Yeah, and even that, and I've seen you, and I think a lot. I mentioned this to you a while back, where the camera guy has you're asking a question, and then it goes up to
Oh,
a guy and like
they like
cuts
take me
you
out.
cuts you out of it, and you're just like, oh man, like this guy could be the best guy in the NHL, but like nobody gives a shit because he can't speak good, basically. And it was just like, just keep Blake in the shot too. Oh my god, but. So you're doing good. I know that it's it's not very
Thank
important for me to say,
you.
but as I've seen it, I'm like I'm always captivated by how you're talking, and because it is talking similarly to everybody else, but it's a little bit different, and I think that's and again unique and rare.
Thank
And I
you.
think a lot of people, it's hard to. You're welcome. It's hard to sometimes, when you are rare, that means that it's like it's part of saying, like, then there's not a lot of you. There's not a lot, and it's sometimes lonely,
Hmm.
but then it's also really rewarding. And then just to be comfortable and being lonely and being I don't, again, I like that. So, but sometimes I'm kind of like, hey, Kelly, why don't I have any friends?
I was like, you don't need
And
friends.
then
You just have me. It's fine.
yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, good.
No, that's
And then she'll
hilarious. That's
exactly.
hilarious.
Well, it's like, you chat with her, and it's like she'll tell me something like, "Damn, that was well said, babe. I love you."
Yeah, it's good to have that. Like Miles is so great for me because if I didn't have Miles, then I would be maybe spiraling because this man puts every game up on the big screen on the projector, is texting me during the game, is like, that was awesome. Keep going. You fucking crushed
Yes,
it. Excuse me.
incredible.
And it's just that's the only opinion that I care about. Any other X,
Exactly.
whatever, Instagram, like whatever, even family, it's like the only opinion I care about is the person that I'm sharing this life with. And for me, that's all that matters is myself and that.
Yeah. All right, we're right about up on time. I think I've asked kind of mostly everything that I'd like to talk about. Is there anything I missed or you'd like to share
Now,
or
Blake,
talk about?
I mean, oh, you wanted to know how I got my name,
Yes.
but I don't know if that's like kind of
Oh,
random.
that's a great question. So, and I think that goes into, what do you have to do to succeed? And that goes into like how your mom thought about things. And she knew, and I get this, like she knew that there would be a prejudice or
Hmm.
something for you. She kind of maybe like preempted that,
Yeah.
and it could give you some degree of leg up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of different things in there from my drill instructor from the Marine Corps. So he's been on the show, and like he was my drill instructor. Like, you've seen any show, or like he is he's a black guy, Haitian. But I show up to OC Officer Candidate School, and he's the main guy, the head drill instructor, gunnery sergeant, and he's just like the baddest motherfucker you can ever imagine. And we're friends now, almost 20 years later, and he's mentioned something to me that I didn't understand, but he said, like, black women, he has one daughter, like, suffer in our society right now. And I'm
Number
kind of like,
one.
I'm like, I don't, how, why? Like, I have no context. I can hardly relate. And so to some degree, I think your mom did that to a degree. But so if you could elaborate into that, I think that's, yeah, very interesting.
Yes. Well, I think it's good to put into context. My mother experienced the prejudice because her name was Latanya, LA capital Tanya. And I think
Yep.
she grew up really disliking the way people, one, said her name, viewed her because of her name, whatever on paper that looks like on a job interview or an application, I should say. She didn't like the response of that. And she had one daughter. I don't even think she really wanted kids. But when she had me, she took a deep, long thought of my name. And I think Blake is just it's a strong name. I love it because it's
Oh, yeah.
just, yeah, it's a strong name. It's one, what do you call it? Not syllable, but
Yeah.
is this, yeah,
I think,
right? Yeah, it's one syllable. And it's just like, boom, it's masculine. If you probably are thinking what race that is, it's probably Caucasian. And so she
yeah,
named
for
me
sure.
Blake because she wanted people to not know who I was until I walked through the door. And she wanted my name to be at the top of the resume list. She wanted me to not have to deal with certain things. And honestly, Miles thought I was a man because I was emailing him when he was volunteering for inner city weightlifting, and I was the
That's
student
funny.
services manager, like, da 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 da, okay, Blake, and then he meets me at the
I felt
holiday.
like just he showed up, his like mind just blown, like
Oh my gosh, he was
like
like,
a pleasant
"Are
surprise, I
you
am sure.
kidding me? That's who I've been emailing the whole time." And our founder's like, "Yeah, that's Blake," and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm swooping in on that," but. It's just, and then to add Bolden, which is just like the dopest, most powerful name for me. I just think I just take a lot of pride in that, and I'm really grateful that my mom thought about how she wanted the world to see me before they got to see me, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I've never thought of it that way. And then when you told me that, however, a little while ago, I love it because it does take away any, perceived prejudice, all of those things until you show up. And again, like I feel like that's a way of like the opens the door a little bit
Yeah.
where, like it preempts any prejudices until like they visual, and then you get it. And that's important. So like what is, so for like young black women, so why is this? What is your thoughts on why, I guess, black women are subjugated or different, or what's the deal? If you could elaborate to a degree.
I think that they are just the most ignored, and also I feel like the most appropriated. Like it's almost like
Mm,
black women keep getting things taken from them, whether that's how they dance, their curves, their lips, the way they carry themselves. They are royalty. And I feel like a lot of our culture now idolizes the characteristics of a black woman, but not actually the black woman, if that makes
yeah.
sense. And it's sad because even you think of a black man where I came from, a single mom and my biological father, and I don't think I've ever said this before, but he stepped out on his family and was with my mom, and that's how became I came into this world. And this is a black man who has a whole family,
Yeah.
and he is not making the smartest choices in taking from not only his family advantage of, but my mother.
Right.
And I grew up without him in my life. And I think, in these underrepresented, impoverished communities, there isn't a lot of support, and women are single parents working their tails off, trying to be great, but the world doesn't sometimes allow them to. And that is where I think being angry comes from and being frustrated comes from. And that is why I work my ass off, because I am changing that narrative for my family and for the future generations of my offspring. I see my grandmother, my great aunt, who have all worked nights, my mom who still works nights, that have been, I don't know if stuck is the right word, but just not able to be their greatest self. And being able to look at me and be like, go, baby, go. Like, go, reach the stars, go where we could not go. And that's why I
Yeah.
work so hard.
Yeah, nothing else to say there. I think that, yeah,
Well,
like
that
how
was
do
a good
you,
explanation. That's my thought.
yeah, well said. I think that your example for women and men, that's it. Like that's the example. That's just set the example. There's no delineation needed. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's all I got. I think that was ended on a good note. I like that because again, it's powerful to talk about this, and I think a lot of people, and it's certainly probably white men and men, don't understand that there is a palpable difference between, and I only realized that when when Kelly and I dated, married, where we'd be like walking or doing something, so I'd be around, but I'd be like wouldn't be in that area, and because she's a smaller woman, but she'd constantly get like tried to be taken advantage of. And I was like, I'm like, babe, what are you doing? Like, how did this even happen? And it's not, and you get it now too. It's like, so I know that. And it's like, what people just see that you're different.
Mhm.
Woman, same thing is that they want to, even other women to Kelly, to take advantage of. And I always am like, it always perplexes me because again, I don't have that same lived experience as
Mhm.
Kelly has, brought to my paradigm. And it's so different. And so it's like you have to be stronger and more powerful and more on your toes in so many different respects. Where women in college and the percentage of like date rapes and different things and being on your toes, and you're kind
Mhm.
of like, I'm like, oh, I had no idea of these
Mhm.
things. And again, and I feel bad. And I'm like, and it never was part of how I did things either. I don't play in those realms of how
Mhm.
men think about things. And I think it's, to illuminate that to, again, my listeners and people listening to that, because it's fascinating. So thank you for sharing.
Absolutely,
Um,
Nikki.
so I think that kind of covers it. Thank you so much for spending some time with me to share your story and kind of how you think about the world and what you're doing now. So this is awesome conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Could you just finish off with kind of Amazon? I don't think we talked about just where like you are right now and
Yeah.
where we can find you.
But professionally, I am a analyst in the
Okay.
NHL
Yeah.
for Amazon Prime, and that is for Prime members. Right now, this is only for Canadian viewers. And then I also work as a reporter and analyst for ESPN for the NHL and Bally Sports West for the Los Angeles Kings. So those are all my broadcasting parentheses. And then I give back to the community as a growth and inclusion specialist for the LA Kings, which I've been doing for the last 4 seasons. Those are all of my roles professionally. And then outside of that, you could find me on Instagram, Sport Blake, as you think it would be spelled. On X, it's Sport Blake. And I'm on TikTok, but like I don't really use it. So if you can find me, good luck. But yeah, it's if you want to go on my website, blakebolden.com. We've got merch if you are into that. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Well, thank you again, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Blake.